It helps to eat well. That's true. That's the first part, right? You're right. And then the second part is you have to really supplement these things. And that's what I learned when I was in Eastern Medical School, is that you have to supplement that because it's just not enough. So herbs and whole food supplements actually fill in the gaps. Because we all tend to shop at the same store, right? We're all guilty of this for the most part. We go down the same aisle. You make the same recipes. I mean, you know, right? We get into routines in our lives. What happens is then the same deficiencies begin to develop more and more over time. Which is why eating cyclically over time is so much better, because you know, with the seasons, things that are growing in season, you're going to get a variety of vegetables that season. So for instance, if you're in the winter time and you're eating vegetables in the winter, there's certain nutrients like onions and garlic that grow more in the winter that will help you with colds. That's why you need to eat them then. Versus there are times, there are other seasons like salads and parsley and things that grow more in the spring that you need more to flush out and cleanse the liver out. Okay? All right, so there's a purpose for everything. So then I came back to Sacramento and I started my practice, did a lot of acupuncture, a little bit of nutrition. I realized that this whole circuitry, there has to be a way to test the body. Because if we do not know what the body needs nutritionally, it's really a guess, isn't it? So how do you feel about guessing when the doctor looks at you and says, you got this new drug, experimental, you know, but there's some side effects. A few people have died. Some people, you know, lost a liver. We'll check yours carefully every month and we'll be fine, you know. I'm sure it won't happen to you, but it's a great drug. So let's get you started on this and then we'll, you know, I mean, how do you feel when he says, why don't you try this for 3 weeks? See what happens. It's like, you want to be an experiment? Guinea pig? I'm not interested, you know. I mean, it's just like, who wants to do that? It's amazing the people that are part of these drug studies, and you know, it's just, you're guinea pigs, right? So the thing is that when I came back, then I was studied for a while, like I said, and practiced, I realized that there had to be a way to find out what the body needed to hit the target. That I call it the nutritional target. And so otherwise, it is a guess. So you can go to the health food store. You can get on the internet late at night when you have insomnia at 3 o'clock and get on there and say, wow, I saw this show. Wake up your spouse and say, honey, I know how to get to sleep now, you know, as they're waking up. And the thing is that, you know, you just don't know. You could spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on things that don't work, that could actually harm your body, you know, because if you don't take the right food or the right nutrients into your body, you can actually do harm. Right? You believe that? I mean, you can actually take synthetics that are harmful to the body and are the wrong substance. I mean, how do you know? You know, what's causing the problem? That's why I specialize in what I do. Actually, we find out exactly what you need, the quantities, and you know what's necessary, and the organs that are out. Because you just can't throw food at the body and expect a result. You have to find out, is it a kidney problem or a bladder or liver? And then you have to feed that organ to fix the problem. So I met a doctor in upstate New York that was so successful that he was seeing patients from all over the world, literally South America, Korea, and he had such great success because he had developed this technique with his associate that saved his life. He had actually not only chronic fatigue, but congestive heart failure from metals that were in his mouth that had leached into his heart and other organs, and it was killing him. He was sleeping 23 hours a day. And he was up just enough to talk on the phone for a few minutes and eat some food and go back to bed. And he was dying. I mean, the doctor said, there's nothing we can do for you. You're dying of congestive heart failure. And then he became so well from this technique that he ended up teaching across the country. And I was one of the students that he had initially several years ago. And I'm grateful that I did, because as soon as I understood what he was teaching, it was so successful that I decided I have to have it in my practice. So I went to actually Florida for 1 week out of every year, and I did an advanced training with him directly, and that was my 1 year internship with him. And then now I continue to do clinical research myself. I've developed my own style of acupuncture, which is unique based on this testing. So I know that everything we do is the right products because I've tested them time and time again, because I see hundreds of patients every month, and I know that, you know, after seeing several cases of heart disease or liver problems, I know that scars can create a lot of disease in the body. And so that's why this is so important, because they have to be found. You have to determine if the scar is active or not. We're going to talk about that in a minute. You also have to determine whether or not, what organ it's affecting, because a scar is like a switch that's gone haywire. So in a sense, it's sort of like if you were seeing me now, I'm talking, and then all of a sudden those lights started flickering on and off. That's like a switch that's gone haywire. It's exactly what happens to scars in your body when they become active or blocked. When the switch is blocked or switching on and off, then it affects these organs internally. So it's as if the organs are working and they're not. They're working and they're not. So you can't really tell for sure what's happening, but you just know you don't feel well when this process is happening. So I've treated thousands of scars. I can tell you clinically that I've seen it. It affects the body at deep, deep levels. I mean, I've had people that have insomnia to weight problems just from a scar, even depression. So I'm going to talk to you about that. Okay? Does that sound interesting? Good. All right. So we're going to get started.
Is this with laser? Using the laser?
Yes, we're going to talk about all. You're a step ahead of me, Jean. As always. That's good. No problem. Okay, that's one of the treatments that Jean was talking about is actually laser. So hold on one second. I got my notes here. Okay. All right, so let's just talk about this a little bit. So the first thing is, so you realize that the body's electric. We talked about that, right? So what the Chinese believed in Chinese medicine is this, is that in a sense the body is electric, like we said, and you've got this nutrition inside the body. This is the battery. So what's the common factor? I mean, how does this electricity flow in the body?
Blood.
Blood, okay.
Organs, skin.
Right. Blood and skin, right? So we're going to call that the battery, but we're also going to call this, in general, this is fluid or water. So how much water do we have in our body overall, percentage-wise? Over 70% water, and even 80% in the brain. One of these lectures the other day, somebody said 90% almost turns into jellyfish, but we made it. A little too much. I had to talk to her afterwards, make sure she wasn't, floating down the stream. I don't know how she drank so much water, but she did. So with that in mind, so if the body's electric, and if this electricity flows in our blood and our skin and the water, what also around us is 70% water that we live on. It's a big round ball. The Earth. So what the Chinese believed and found was that the Earth was kind of like this microcosm. It kind of represented the body in many ways. So that's actually how traditional Chinese medicine was discovered, was they looked at the outside world to determine what was going on the inside. Isn't that interesting? So here you got the macrocosmic world on the outside, and then you're looking at the inside world here. So the Earth is also 70%. So you look at the oceans and the electrical flows of the Earth and all of this magnetism, it's amazing. So we are no different than the Earth in the sense that we have fluids that flow, we have desert areas, they're dry, and hope that they stay dry because if they get wet, we get in trouble. Like for instance, the lungs don't like to be wet. They don't like to be too dry either. Get your lungs angry, get them too wet, for sure. Now kidneys are the opposite. They like to be wet. You get them dry, you got a problem. You get really angry. And the liver has its own problems. So with all that combined, basically there are more electrical flow, there's more electrical flow going on in the skin through nerves, because that's how this electricity travels, right, through nerves. But it's actually even more than nerves. They actually call them meridians or circuits, right? That's what we passed around in the little body, right? Our little acumen. So these circuits are kind of like pipelines. So we know that the circuits are only there when people are alive. Once a person dies, the nerves don't go away, except they decompose. But these circuits or meridians do not disappear except if a person dies. So the circuits are like pipelines, kind of like, so the electricity in the body flows kind of like water, but at the same time it flows like electricity. And so it's a combination of water and electrical flow. So it's very fascinating. And what do we call this electricity of the body? Qi. Electrical flow of the body is called qi. So you spell it C-H-I or Q-I. It's not cheese. It's qi. So you've heard that. It's just a fancy term for electrical flow in the body, qi. So what's fascinating is that when we have qi in different areas of the body, for instance, qi in the kidney, we call it kidney qi. So it'd be sort of like your house. Let's go back to the house analogy. So we have the house, and we have electrical flow that's going to the kitchen. So if the kitchen qi or the circuit goes off, then you've lost your qi to your kitchen. but yet the living room and the other rooms are still working. So that's just another example, right? So, and I'm bringing you up to speed as far as these scars. That's why we're talking about the basics, right? Okay, then finally, the other part is that there has to be these circuits from the battery. So the Chinese believe that if we eat good food, and then if we're also born with, in other words, we get the battery power from two sources. One is from constant nourishment, from daily activities, right, from eating and resting. This is daily. And then the other is from prenatal qi, which means that when we're born with a certain amount of genes and strength. So who do you know that actually was born very sick? Know anyone in your family maybe, or friends? Okay, double pneumonia or something like that, or right?
Cerebral palsy.
Cerebral palsy, right, exactly, right. So you see that those people really struggle over time, but sometimes they can really pull through a lot if they, strengthen their daily activities and eat a lot of good food. They can turn that around many times, right? My grandfather was an example of that. Actually, he had double pneumonia when he was born. He didn't get it past the 8th grade because he was always in bed, and he had Bright's disease. He had some kidney disorders. I mean, he was really in bad shape. Yet he lived to be 94. And the difference was my dad taught him nutrition when he was in his 40s. And it turned his life around. I mean, he literally learned that food feeds the body. And that if you don't eat well, your body declines greatly fast. So he learned the fuel of the body was, food, good food. So he lived and he turned his life around, and it was amazing.
Did he go to an acupuncturist?
What's that?
Did he ever go to an acupuncturist?
I never had an opportunity to actually give him treatment. No, actually, I did. I gave him treatments, yes.
Mm-hmm.
He went to me. Absolutely. So, yeah, thanks for asking. So then finally, so we talked about the meridians. And then moving forward here is basically that, so there are more nerves in the skin than anywhere else in the body. So if I had somebody standing before me, and if we could just erase all the bones and the blood, and they just stood right here in front of you, you could actually still recognize that person if just the nerves alone were standing in front of you. There are more nerves on the skin. 80% of the nerves are actually on the skin more than anywhere else in the body, which is why when you cut the skin, you have more pain than anywhere else when you cut the skin. That's why it's so painful. Okay, do you have a question, or you just? Okay, gotcha. No problem. So, so with that in mind, if we cut the skin, if we have all this 80% of nerves on the skin, how do you think that affects these circuits?
It stops them.
It stops them. It creates a block, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the whole point is, we call this a scar, which is a cut, defined as a cut on the outer skin. So sometimes people think scars on the internal. It's actually not as important when we deal with skin scars on the internal, unless it's adhesions, so from some surgery or something, that's different. But for the most part, scars or cuts on the skin are more significant clinically than internal scars. So whenever I ask a patient, they say, "Do you have any scars?" And they always say, "Oh, I've got this internal scar, and my massage therapist told me." I said, "Well, that's good, but that's really not that important, to be honest." So, and by the way, this is all based on, now we're getting into the theory of scars. It's really based on German research. So I'm part German, so I can say the Germans are good, right? They did some good things, I think. So, but the point is that they actually found out that in Germany, now you won't believe this, but it's true. After every surgery, the Germans realized that as soon as you cut into the body, it has to be repaired immediately, because this nerve endings in the skin, when they're cut, will actually start to affect the brain and how the brain feeds, this memory, this connection. The communication is blocked, right? And when you what happens if you block the communication in the brain to other organs?
You die.
Well, you don't die. I mean, that's that's good.
On your way.
Ultimately?
Good. Well.
The organ
Slowly. How
gets
about
ill.
slowly? It affects the organs and how it functions, right? Because the organs have to remember that organs need two things. Every organ needs good communication with each other to work as a team. So you're cutting off that communication, and every organ needs food, organ food, right? So the thing is that McDonald's hamburger is not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That will not feed your organ. It'll destroy your organ. And then if you get too nervous and your mental, our mental state will also affect our electrical flows tremendously. That's why our mind and our bodies are connected, electrically. So they found that after surgery, of any kind, or anytime they had to do some procedure, even if it was in an outpatient, they would treat that scar with a special laser, which is the cold laser that we use in our clinic. We're going to talk about that more in a minute. And they found that if they didn't, that patients would develop severe conditions. You know, disease, I mean, just weight gain, I mean, just all of these conditions that just didn't make sense until they linked it to the scar. And they realized that not only that, but we've also found clinically that many of these scars are not sterile. So what happens is, you know, you've got a lot of, you know, bacteria and viruses on the skin. You go in for surgery. I mean, who believes actually, you know, when people get surgery, it's a completely sterile environment? Not a single germ in the place. It's impossible, right? I mean, it's much better. You know, the history on medicine, you know what they used to do? Doctors would actually do autopsies, and then they go deliver baby. And they never wash their hands. I mean, that wasn't too long ago. That was like less than, you know, 150 years ago. And then what they realized was that there's something about something they couldn't see that was contaminating people somehow. There's like this mystery problem, you know, ghost germs or whatever they call it. You know, they found the germ theory, and then that's what led to, you know, microscopes and all of that, you know, thing. So the point is, it wasn't very long ago they didn't realize that germs were present. So germs, many times I find that people go in the hospital, had many patients where they come out, and they were so sick when they came out after the surgery. I thought, well, it must be the drugs. And then I realized over a lot of clinical experience that actually many times they pick up these viruses, serious viruses, from whatever contamination that happened, and then they were really sick. And we'd have to actually decontaminate them, get rid of the viruses and whatever was, even chemicals, because he used a lot of chemicals to sterilize. Then you've got the chemicals that are cut, you know, you cut the scar, produce it, and then they get into the skin and the tissue. And that doesn't leave the body unless you remove it properly. So that's the thing we have to remember tonight, you know, with the lecture. I want you to realize that things don't leave the body unless we ask them to. You know, I had this one patient I'll never forget that had copper toxicity in his liver. And it, you know, he came from his Western MD. He tried everything, and he said, you know, I've been drinking water for, you know, like a gallon or two for 2 years now. And I just wonder what my copper levels are like. And what I didn't have the heart to tell him right away was that, you know, drinking water in high volumes is not going to flush out copper. It's like a magnet. It just attracts into that tissue, and it's there until you remove it with heavy metal detoxing procedures, right? So anyway, of course, his metals were the same, and he was frustrated, and so anyway, fortunately, we could have helped him, but he got lost. So, all right. So then finally, so let's talk about some of the concepts on scars. So first of all, we talked about scars. So what type of scars can we have? What are some examples of scars?
Like a medical scar from surgery?
Medical scar from surgery. So they'd be like gallbladder. Gallbladder scars can be bad, especially, you know, when the old type of scars where they just like cut you, you know, from chin to chin, you know, chin to toe or something. I mean, you ever see those scars? They're bad. I mean, they used to be this long. Now they don't do that. Usually they do 4 little scars. Unfortunately, the size of the scar doesn't determine how bad it's affecting the brain. Sometimes it can be the littlest scar that you had no idea that you had, you know, that it would cause a problem. And sometimes the biggest scars create very little problem. But in general, what happens is we bring our Acumen back. Kind of flew in. There he is. Okay. Great. Thank you. I just need his help a little bit. So the longer the scar is, the greater the chance it's going to affect multiple organs. So remember, each one of these circuits, when you go across the body, actually will cross these circuits, and each circuit connects to an organ. So remember, these are the circuits that connect to the organs internally. So that's why acupuncture works for internal medicine. Because when you stimulate the skin, you literally are activating internal organs. And when you do the different combinations of points, you're activating multiple organs at once, which is a phenomenal thing. It means actually you're balancing every organ in your body if you do acupuncture properly. And that's part of the system that I developed, that I was telling you about. So when people have low back scars, very bad. You got to get those handled, right? People that have scars up and down are really bad too on the midline. Those are some of the worst scars that I've seen. That's why hysterectomy scars, C-section scars are really bad, because they cover pretty much every circuit, you know, that there is. The good news is there's a solution. I'm not going to leave you like that, you know, of course. Don't be scared. But it is something you have to take care of. It's important. So those are the types of scars we're dealing with, right? Medical scars, like you said. Okay. Now the other types of scars that people deal with are birthmarks.
So
I've had
will a
birthmarks.
scar right here affect the stomach?
Sometimes the scar, very rarely does the scar that's in the location affect that organ in the location. It's rare. I find usually it's just a distant location. So usually you have a scar somewhere on the pinky as an example, and it's affecting the heart. I've had that happen for many patients. I'll give you an example. That woman that was having palpitations. I mean, she just couldn't stop her heart, and she had high blood pressure. Just kept, soaring. Doctors didn't know what was wrong. Kept giving her one medication after another. Sure enough, we found that it was a scar in like 6th grade on her pinky, and it was affecting the heart meridian circuit. We fixed the scar and the pain, everything went away. Just fixed it. Fixed the problem. And it can be that simple. Or it can be more complicated where you have a scar plus a virus. So usually people have multiple problems. It's usually not that simple. Okay. And then the other types of scars, I would say, would be burns. Sometimes people have a burn when they were younger. They don't realize that it was a problem. And like I said, the more the area, the larger the area, the bigger the chance that that scar will be a problem. And can anyone think of anything else? Skin your knee, right? Falls, cuts, burns, moles. I've had moles become a problem. Even though they're not cancerous, a mole can actually block electrical flow if it's big enough. Yeah. Yes, you had a question.
Oh, keloid came to mind.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they're really bad because once again, remember the skin is just where this flow happens. This is what keloid.
What is that?
Yeah, it's a bump. It's just a more serious. You can tell keloids are like more serious scars. They're very large and there's a lot of tissue buildup. They're usually, I've seen them a lot on the chest. And
Is it like a mole?
I've
No.
seen a lot with ear
Just something
piercings. Like
Yeah.
big ear piercings on cartilage. A lot of people get them on the back of their
Right.
ear.
Exactly, that's true.
Just
No,
like
keloids are just an excess growth of scar tissue that just looks like a mass, and you would recognize it when you saw it. It's just excessive, tissue.
Do tattoos cause scarring?
Tattoos. I've had people that have had tattoos that have had insomnia from a tattoo. I had a woman that actually continually had insomnia, and from that, until we fixed the tattoo, we didn't remove the tattoo, but we just fixed the electrical disturbance, which we're going to talk about in our treatment plan, right? I've also had dental procedures. I've had people that have had root canals, and or usually, wisdom teeth removed. It can create a problem. That's a big issue. Okay. I've had people that have major dental surgeries. They go across the palate, and those create a lot of problems too. Because there's this meridian that goes up and down the middle of the body, up into the mouth, and back down the middle of the body. And when that's disturbed, it can really create major electrical flow problems. All right, I know there's one more that I'm missing here. Piercings. So piercings can create problems. Whenever I see somebody and they stick out their tongue for me, which I do a lot, because of the Chinese medicine, and I see a piercing, I worry over time because electrically that's a disturbance. And the tongue, belly button, those are kind of really bad piercings. Because eventually, even earrings, usually people, if they're really healthy and well, earrings aren't a problem, unless you start doing multiple piercings along the ear here, because this is the spine. This area here represents the spine. And then there are other areas that represent the wrist and arms. So I've had many patients that have had carpal tunnel problems, and when we found that when they removed veins that were way up here in the wrist area, that their problems would go away.
But when you take them out, there's still a scar.
Right, but so that's correct. So sometimes it's just taking away the metal is enough to fix the problem, or we also have to use a laser. It doesn't close up the hole, but that's what we're going to talk about the treatment. Yeah, good. All right, so those are the main sources for the most part. So when you have the scar, there's the different types of scars we talked about, location and whatnot. There's also active and inactive. So let me explain. So a lot of times when you have this conversation on the table, patient says, well, I've got 6 scars, and they're talking about how it happened, and the guys really like the motorcycle scars, and they just talk about how the bear chased them and it was terrible and all these things. So I don't know why guys like to show their scars, but they do. So, but the point is that we have to determine, when I do my testing, I determine, is it causing a block in the body or not? Because there's no sense in treating something if it's not a problem, right? But what it is, usually I'll pulse and I'll find out usually there's only one active scar on the body. Sometimes people have multiple. Like I had a bad bike accident when I was living as a missionary in France, and I have a scar on my lip still, and then I had some on my chin and wrist, and just recently, the last 5 years, this scar on my lip started to become active. What I mean by that, by active, is I started to feel the side effects of it. It's like I was doing really well during the day. I'd be functioning well, seeing a lot of patients, and all of a sudden I'd feel this strange discomfort in my low back, which I never get pain. I just don't. I don't get headaches. I really don't have a problem. I feel fortunate. So, and then I'd get this stiffness in my low back. I was like, what's going on, you know? And I've linked it to the scar, and as soon as I would do the scar treatments on myself, it would literally go away within 5-10 minutes, and the pain would be gone. Discomfort. So, I mean, that's how much it can affect the spine. It can affect the mind, sleep, mood, weight loss. I've had people lose weight. I had several patients that could not lose weight for anything until we handled the scar, and then it would just release, pound after pound every week. It would just, because what's happening was the scars in the midline, especially C-sections, hysterectomies, will affect weight because it affects the thyroid. So that's why those midline scars can affect our weight terribly. So it's even a belly button. By the way, okay, this is a quiz, okay? So let's see who gets this. What's the one scar we all have? All right, so I gave it to you.
Yeah.
All right, I should have done that differently. Anyway. It's a belly button, right?
You want us to win.
So I love that when people say, "I don't have a scar. I never had a scar." I said, "Well, you've got one." And but the point is that that's the one scar that we all have to, Usually, I had a young girl. I'll never forget. She was probably 18 months infant, and she had problems with insomnia. I mean, she would just wake up and couldn't sleep, and sure enough, it was her belly button scar. We started to handle that. Actually, it improved her learning ability. She started to learn a bit more and better, and then also it affected her sleep. So it's pretty. Isn't this interesting? It's just. I mean, when I came across this with my mentor, who started this whole process because of the German research, I just couldn't believe it. I just didn't realize this was such a big issue for so many people.
What was your mentor? What was his name?
Dr. Freddie Ullin was one of my mentors.
The guy in Miami, in Florida?
Yes.
Ullin?
Yes.
How do you spell that?
ULAN. So then finally, I'll tell you another story of a man that had prostate problems. And he had a pinky scar, and he just had this problem. He'd wake up constantly at night, 4 or 5 times a night, just couldn't get any sleep. And he handled the scar. I think it was 8 years old when he had that scar. So sometimes time doesn't mean anything. You could have a scar for 20 years, it's not active, and then all of a sudden that circuit breaks. The same reason why you're in your kitchen and you never had a circuit problem, and then all of a sudden you're cooking, plug in the toaster, and that's all it takes. So stress really brings this on for people. People, when they have a lot of stress in their lives, it seems like it kind of blows a scar, is what I've noticed. It's like all of a sudden they start having these problems. So let's talk about how you can recognize that you might have an electrical problem, right? A scar. So some of the symptoms of a scar. It's really tricky, by the way. This is not something that the average person can find. It's just that until you get tested, until I test you to find out, if you have an active scar or not, and what it's affecting, it's really almost impossible for you to do this yourself. But if you have scars that we've talked about that are significant, or old scars that are painful, that's another sign too. If a scar is painful, most likely it's an active scar. But the symptoms are this. People tend to have symptoms that come and go all the time. It's like, I try to lose weight, no matter what I eat, no matter how I exercise, nothing happens. I lose it and then it comes back, lose it and it comes back. Blood pressure. I've had many blood pressure cases that I've corrected, by solving the scar problem. Weight, like we talked about. Also memory, insomnia. So as an example, people say, I sleep really well, and then I don't. It just doesn't make sense. Also bowel trouble. A lot of people have IBS, if you want to call it that, where things work well or overwork or underwork. You're cycling between, 5 times a day, bowel movement, to every 5 days. And you're wondering what's happening. I'm eating the same food, right? So that's an electrical problem. It means the bowels have an electrical flow like this. and it's not getting the proper juice.
That means you have a scar, or it means you have electrical?
Well, a scar, typically. It's not a sure thing, but most likely it's possible, yeah. Depression. People that have mood swings that are just really extreme. I've seen people that are just like I had a patient today, and she said, I feel bipolar. That's why she described her energy. It's just like, I can either go out and build a building, conquer the world, or I'm on the sofa, flipping the channels. You know, it's one or the other. And that's, I mean, how many people feel like that? It's really, that's the sign of a scar, typically, as well. So, and the list goes on. I mean, there's so many ways that a scar, it's just endless. I mean, every organ that you have in your body can be affected by a scar. It can be a new scar. I've had patients that had a scar within 3 days and it became active like that. I've had patients that had it for 20 years. And then I've been treating them for 2-3 years, and then all of a sudden it became active. It's all part of that. Any questions on that? Okay. So now we come to the point to where, now that we know what an active scar is and what they're, you know, where we find them, how they affect us, and the question is this, and that is treatment. So legally, yeah.
So if you, like if I pulled my nail off, can that leave a scar?
It can, yes. It's not common, but it can. Anywhere that the skin is disrupted, whether it be a cut, a burn, or mole, or you know, is actually considered a scar. So remember what it is. It's so powerful, though, of a block in the body. Pain is also another thing. Remember, we didn't talk about it so much, but I've had patients that were in tremendous amount of pain, and when we did the scar treatment, actually sometimes it gives them more pain initially, and it's so powerful that it's actually releasing this block like a dam. So when we release it too fast, it can just explode with energy. And so we have to do is back off the time, the treatment. So let's talk about that. So it takes a very special laser, because we're gonna, now let's just do a diagram of the skin. If we're looking down at the skin, right, and you've got this block, you know, which is the scar. So what happens is the body, when it repairs itself, it tries to repair the skin and bring them back to normal, even though there's a cut. So it has to build a bridge. That's what the scar is, a bridge. Well, unfortunately, this bridge acts like a capacitor. And a capacitor in electronics, you know, you've heard of that before probably, kind of builds up energy. It kind of stores it, builds it up, and then it releases it. Builds it up, and then it releases it. That's what capacitors do in the you know, electronics. So what this does is this, you know, builds up this charge. If I use a meter here, it's like those guys with that hit the bell with a hammer at the, you know, at the fair. You know, the bell goes up. So finally, it just releases. So what's happening is this energy that's getting to the organ internally, that circuit, say this is the liver circuit on the surface of the skin, it does not have to be over the liver. Remember that. Usually it's not, like Gene had asked that. That was a good question. Usually, because you have to think of this light switch analogy, the switch is the scar, and the organ is the light. So how many times do we have, you know, switches like that switch over there, by the way, I happen to know, turns on the light behind us. So that's quite distance. I mean, that's 20, 30 feet away from the source. So as long as that circuitry is working well, I know I can trust that light that it will go on with that switch. But unfortunately, there is a switch that's created as soon as you have a scar. So I call it a switch that's created from the scar, the injury. And once this switch is created, then it just isn't consistent. It just goes on and off, and it just has it has a mind of its own. Sort of like you're in your kitchen and you're just so frustrated because you're cooking and the lights go off again. You blow a circuit. And you just can't figure out why until you go out to the panel and you reset everything, and you have to call an electrician. Because even if you keep resetting, it doesn't get fixed until you replace the part. So we have to replace the switch so that it stays on. So that instead of up and down and blocking, actually then the flow becomes more normal. So in order to make that switch, that transition, it requires a laser treatment, which is not a cosmetic treatment. Sometimes people say, oh, you do laser, that's fantastic. I'd like to get rid of some of these wrinkles. And, great, I'll lay on the table. I said, you can lay on the table all day long, but we're not going to treat those wrinkles. Not with that. I help wrinkles other ways. But so the point is that we use a special laser, and my mentor, through a lot of research that he's done, and I have as well, is that it has to be the right laser. So this cracks me up. You're going to love this story. So I have this patient that wanted to save some money, and it's really not that expensive for a treatment. It's like maybe $15 for a laser treatment. So anyway, he said, well, I've got a laser, and I'll just use it at home. Just show me where I have to do it. And I said, well, let me explain. This is a medical laser, and it's about $250 to $700. And I doubt you have one of these at home in your garage. He says, well, I do. I've got a level laser. It's a leveler, and I'll just use it. So we have, there are so many different types of lasers, and they go all the way from a leveler, all the way, in construction, all the way to eye surgery, right? So this is not that kind of laser. We'd never burn a hole in anyone or get rid of scars. Get rid of wrinkles. But what it does do is that the body sees this as different. It kind of resets the electrical system. So physically, you don't necessarily see a change with that scar, but the body does. The brain starts to see, oh, that was supposed to be flowing like this direction. We better fix that. So it resets the electrical system in the brain. Once you do that, then the organ gets all the power and electrical flow it should, and begins to function properly. Okay? Now, the other part is, the second part is, we also found that if you don't put some kind of oil, I test people for basically 4 different types of oils that I use in my practice. One of them is wheat germ oil, sesame seed oil. It just depends. And you want to make sure you get the right type and the right brand. But the thing is that when you apply the oil to the skin, what it does is it softens the scar. And this is where scars start to go away. I've had patients who are starting to handle the scar. It's like every time they come in, it's like harder and harder to find them. It's like you almost have to make a circle around the scar just to find it anymore, highlight it. But that will be a great way, you've heard that before, where people say, well, put some wheat germ oil on it once you get through the surgery. So some of the worst scars, besides the hysterectomy, C-section, are actually open heart surgery scars. Anyone that you know or whatever, really need to get them in and get them tested. And we can get them started on a program to handle that. So really important. Okay? So that's really the protocol, is a laser, oil, and there's another thing too. Sometimes when there's infection we talked about, I have to do some special tests, and I find out whether or not there's a virus that's left in the scar. Because even with all of this, sometimes the infection will cause the scar to keep blowing. It's like it doesn't quite hold. So like people say, I felt really great, and then all of a sudden it just blew again. And so that's where we have to do special procedures in the office that actually handle that. So it works really well. So sometimes we put topicals on in order to handle the scar. Okay, some questions?
Yeah, what about mud packing?
Yeah, I haven't found that to be, I know I've heard that before. I've seen some patients, I've had some patients that have done that, and I can't say with certainty that works.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you feel, you've seen with certainty this stuff?
Oh yeah, 100%. I've never had a scar that hasn't been fixed, for sure. But what I can say is that probably mud packing would work potentially with chemicals. So sometimes when they, sterilize an area and there's chemicals in the tissue, that would probably be helpful, but it may not get out all the chemicals, and that's the disadvantage of it. Yes?
So if you've had a scar from childhood, it's going to actually keep that away.
Yes, so remember, the oil will soften it. Electrically, you can only fix it with the laser, the right laser, right treatment. And then if there's infection, yes, absolutely, you can actually, I've had scars disappear.
Does it take very long?
Sometimes 3 to 4 months. The treatment itself, usually, most scar treatments that we do are 4 to 8 treatments. Usually that's it. And then I've had children that have had scars. It's amazing how it affects everyone. Yes?
I just have a little story that I want to tell you. It was 35 years from the time I fell off the piano stool, and I went to my first acupuncture treatment. And he treated my whole body, and I didn't have any pain at all. And when he got to my neck, it was like an electrical shock throughout my body. It was very painful. And of course I'm wondering, well, what happened, And he said, well, I found that you had scar tissue in your neck. So then I went back for 4 or 5 more treatments, and then I've been well now for probably close to 20 years.
Fantastic.
Now, was that a scar the way you call scar here? Or was that an eruption? I never had any pain. I did have some pain from it because in what I call the olden days, and I would put my garage door down, I would have to use both hands. Otherwise, I would be in severe pain in my back, and the inflammation and everything was so severe. And of course, I was young, and I didn't want. It was before acupuncture, really, And I finally went to an orthopedic surgeon, and he said, I can't recommend, I don't know what to recommend for you. He said, you could try acupuncture. You know, it was just barely heard of. So I was young and, you know, naive, and I wasn't going to try acupuncture. But finally, when I did get older and more mature, I did try acupuncture. But I was curious, was that considered a scar, what happened on my neck?
Yes, well, let me ask you, did you actually have a physical cut from that injury, or is it just a
No,
trauma?
I didn't know anything about it.
Okay, so that's actually a separate thing that he was talking
I
about.
see.
So let me explain, and that's a good question. So any other questions on this? Is that clear? Okay. It's fascinating. It really is. I mean, if you have a scar, it can change your life. You know, it can ruin your life if it's active. It really can. I mean, because you feel terrible. I've had people who were just had a young man. Let me answer your question in a minute on that. Was so depressed, he just couldn't get out of bed. He didn't know what was wrong. I mean, it was a scar. It was just causing depression for him. Because remember, the electricity has to go to the brain too. And once we handled that, it changed him.
How long did that take with him?
I think it was a period over 3 to 4 months. Pancreas, you know, blood sugar problems. I've had people that have pulled out of diabetes with scars. And that's how serious it is. Yes?
You say about $50 for treatment.
I think it's 17 for, if you do it yourself. Sometimes what we'll do is once we find the scar, sometimes there are scars that you can locate easily, and we'll show you how to do it. And we'll just have you, as a courtesy, we'll give you a discount for, it's not dangerous, and we'll just show you how to do the scar. Yeah. Okay. But we'll monitor the treatment. So, yeah. So to answer your question, so this is the topical on the skin. That's one type of scarring. Then there's trauma to the tissue. So in Chinese medicine, we believe that it's sort of like there are rivers or streams that flow on the top of the body, which is the nerve net we talked about. Then there are deep oceans that flow deeper in the body. So the electricity in the body flows at different levels. There's some qi, electricity, that flows very fast and rapid, bubbly on the top of the skin, which is why, once again, our skin is so sensitive, you know, to burns and cuts, touch, and heat, because we need to protect ourselves, and, you know, it gives us feedback. But when you get deeper in the body, if you had a trauma like you did, when you have that impact, actually the pain that you're feeling for many years was a block of this deep qi flow. And that's what acupuncture breaks up. So acupuncture can affect both areas, deep and superficial
Because
qi.
the only time I was ever in pain was when I, like I said, it would overdo with my shoulder.
Right.
And I would just go to bed for 3 or 4 days, and then I was well.
Then we go,
you know, until
free
it
up.
happened again, you know, and so.
Exactly.
But it was wonderful to find the acupuncture. And
Good, I'm glad you did.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, we'll have to give you some too later. All right, I know you're on a program, but that's
Right.
great. That's a good start. So we're charging the battery, and then we'll get the circuits going. Okay.
Right.
So any other questions or concerns on that? Okay, good. So let's see, we're going to finish up here. I want to do a demo. So I'm going to go ahead and have somebody, I'm going to have a patient come up to the front. But before I do that, I just want to explain something that really, what's happening here is, you know, I've searched all my life for truth. You know, I mean, who doesn't want truth, right? What's more discouraging? Isn't it discouraging? I mean, when you think you found truth and it's not, or it's mixed, some truth, some error, it's frustrating, isn't it? So what I can tell you, I know this works, and, you know, there's a lot of confusion out there in the world, you know, about how to heal a body and how to fix this. And, you know, the thing is that I know this is an affordable, effective way to heal the body. I just had a couple earlier this week that they're older, they're close to 80, and I still don't consider that old. I mean, I think when you get to 100, then we consider it older. But that's the truth. So the point is that, you know, they were on a program for a long time. They're doing really well, and they're doing so fantastic. We got them such a high level, like a Ferrari body. I mean, they felt fantastic. And they said, you know, it drives kind of far to come here, and I don't know if I can do that anymore. And it's kind of, you know, maybe a little more money than I can spend. And I said, okay, no problem. You know, but I need to explain something. What's going to happen here is it's like you've been driving this Ferrari. You know, I got you from a Yugo to a Ferrari. Ferrari body, right? Optimal health. And what you're going to do right now is you're about ready to turn off the engine on the freeway. And you're going to coast. And you'll coast for a little while because you got some pretty good speed going. But eventually, you will run out of speed. And you'll start to, you know, backslide, and you'll start to feel the old patterns and the old things that happened before. So it's really important to always remember that once you start on a program, you want to stay on a program. Because, you know, the body always needs maintenance, repair, and you need to catch things before they become a problem. And I'll use this last story. Is my dad told me this story, and I love this story because it's comical in the sense that when he was a young boy, less than 8, I think, my grandmother always told him that whenever there was a problem in life that made him anxious or upset, he should always go down, open up the windows in his room, lay in his bed, and just relax. So he's sitting in his room, in his upstairs room in Ohio, which is where he was born and raised. And I don't know what my grandmother was doing, something downstairs. And so he was playing with fire, of course, typical thing for kids. And so he's in the wastebasket starting some fires. And so the fire starts, and he knew he was in trouble. And so he didn't know exactly what to do. So he said, I already know. I'll open the windows. So he did. He opened the windows. I'll go down and lay and relax in the bed. So he did. And so this fire is brewing, this fire is going on, starting to burn things down a little bit, and smoke's coming down. He's, just laying on the bed. And fortunately, the smoke's going out the window. The fire trucks come. And then finally, he was saved, fortunately, which is why I'm here still, why I'm here. And so the greatest thing about that story that I've learned is that, it's great to relax, but sometimes we're really, we don't want to confront something. We're waiting for the doctor to say, you've got a real fire going on. You got heart disease. You got high blood pressure. You better take this drug or it's over, Or, what are we waiting for? If we don't get on a program, we don't take care of ourselves, we're just waiting for that wastebasket fire to become an inferno. And, so many times in Western medicine, unfortunately, we're putting a facade on the front of the house. So the house is on fire, and we're just putting up stucco. You're calling the stucco guys and say, I like a fresh coat of stucco, kind of improve the look of this place, do you mind? Or we're calling in lumber, got a fire here, calling the lumber truck, I need lumber right away. It's like, sometimes we don't use the right tool for the right problem. It's like, we're going to be in big trouble. So what my suggestion to you is that whether or not you're on a program, stay on a program. And if you haven't got on a program, get on one. Because you have no idea that whether or not you have a hidden scar that's causing some problems that you're dealing with right now. And it's really impossible to treat yourself unless you really know what's going on. And so it's so important that you have somebody with knowledge and experience to take care of these things, because small fires, it only takes a spark to start a forest fire. And people don't realize that the heart disease is, how long do you think it takes to develop heart disease? Years. 15 to 20 to 25 years. By the time you see that forest fire, blood pressure going up, hardening the arteries, varicose veins, tongue, the veins underneath the tongue, they're dark and stagnant and purple looking, you better do something, because you've already got a forest on fire. And so, it's going to take a while to put that out. It's not going to go away because you took a blood pressure medication. It's like you're going to be heading towards heart disease and open heart surgery if you don't do something. Cancer. Remember, that's the second thing also that's killing most Americans, besides heart disease, is cancer. So how long does this cancer take to develop a fire of cancer? About the same time. Sometimes 10, but at least, I would say 10 to 20 years. So the thing is that, it doesn't happen tomorrow or yesterday. We see Bob, the neighbor, say, Bob, what happened? I don't know, I just had cancer. I don't know what happened. It just hit me. It didn't hit him. The thing is, he had signs that he didn't recognize. And if he took care of that fire earlier, he probably wouldn't be in the state that he's in.
Can you diagnose with cancer? Can you tell if someone has it?
Now I'm getting in trouble. Good question. Legally, I'm on camera. And so what I'll say is I cannot diagnose or assess or say that I can treat cancer. But I will tell you that I know that there are signs that people potentially have cancer. I just had a man that was, emaciated, just kept losing weight. I kept sending him to the doctor to get lab tests, and unfortunately, I just knew that he had some form of cancer. I just suspected it, and I just got an email from him, unfortunately, that he had liver cancer. He says, "You're right. They found liver cancer, and I don't have much time to live." And it's unfortunate. I wish I would have gotten to him earlier, but unfortunately, he didn't listen to the signs. Yes.
If you're doing acupuncture for a situation or a problem, do you treat the whole body, or do you just treat that particular area that you think may be a problem?
That's a good question. So there's a Western approach to acupuncture, which I don't like, and that is symptomatic Kaiser treatments, which is where you have a problem here, we'll surround it with needles, And when you go to put it somewhere else, well, we can't do that unless we get approval because you have a wrist problem. That does not work with acupuncture. It's just symptomatic. So you can use acupuncture or herbs or anything symptomatically to make it just like Western medicine. See, the problem is if we use it singly, isolated treatment, then you're just treating symptoms. The treatments that I use for acupuncture, which is why I developed my own system, is really internal medicine. I mean, I've got incredible results with heart disease, immune system problems.
So you do the whole body at once?
It's a whole body. Yeah, I guess I didn't answer. Whole body, correct.
But I heard there's Japanese also.
I use a Japanese style, so it's very gentle, and I'll share another story with you since we're talking about this. So, a woman actually that I just left today actually for treatment. I think I've seen her for 6 months. Incredible, rheumatoid arthritis, full body pain, inflammation. I mean, she's dying. I mean, her body was just failing, and she could barely get out of bed in the morning. She has 3-4 kids. It was affecting her life greatly. Now she has barely any pain. I mean, it literally, because we unblocked all the channels with electricity, acupuncture, the electrical flows, and nutritionally we handled her immune system, which was attacking itself. So I mean, that's kind of unheard of, and so we're actually getting her off of the drugs with her doctor. She's needing less and less drugs every month, and it's unbelievable. She's going the other way, and they just can't believe it. They're just like, we just don't see this. What are you doing? I have doctors copying if they're really interested, supplement packages and all this stuff. It just doesn't work that way. It's for each person. It's taken me years to understand this and to help people. Yes?
Well, this is going on a lot longer than I thought, so I have to make a phone call. Is there some
There is. This person here might have a phone.
So intertime doesn't matter.
Absolutely.
about how much?
What was that?
Oh, it's fine. It's
That's
cool.
her ride. I
Oh, that's your right. Okay, I thought it was one of my staff. Okay. We're actually going to finish in 5 minutes, and then we can do some testing.
Take your time.
Little test. Yes, consult, yes.
How long is that take?
That's going to be about another 5 minutes. So figure about 15
We're
maybe?
just talking, I'm just letting you know we're here.
Gotcha. No problem. Okay. So to finish up, any questions on that or? All right, good. So those are some good examples. So let's, so to finish up, we have to be able to measure this electricity in the body. And we use an arm or a muscle, because what happens is, if we use the heart as an EKG as an example, right? So an EKG measures what? Come on, front row. You guys are good. You guys are on a roll now. We got the twin combo here. What is it?
Electrical.
Electricity to the heart, right? So you've got this meter going on here, and it just tells you how the heart's doing. Well, instead we use we actually test each organ, not just the heart, but they use the surface of the skin, don't they? They put the pads down on your feet.
Mm-hmm.
If you ever get an EKG on their feet, run out of the hospital immediately. The reason why is because the electrical circuits are on the surface of the skin over that organ, right? That's how acupuncture works, but there's also distal points too.
So does that fix heart murmurs?
The EKG?
Yeah.
No.
Well, the acupuncture over the heart.
Yes. Well, not necessarily over the heart.
Or, I know what you mean, the electrical circle, so wherever it...
Wherever the problem is,
interrupted,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can help, yes, exactly. We can help heart problems with heart treatment.
With animals?
I don't get into furry friends and feathers. I get locked up for that.
Yeah, I know.
Although anyway, can't say that on
Yeah,
camera.
somebody can send you to.
Yeah, I've got somebody I can send you to. How's that? No problem. Got to take care of the critters too. Trust me, it's enough for the humans. I like, it's better for me if I can communicate with them. So. All right, so then finally we use a muscle instead of a meter, right? So the meter is the muscle. The muscle is the meter, rather. And then so what we do is we measure this electricity by the strength of the arm. So a muscle does one of two things. It either locks, right? Or it actually releases. That's it. Nothing else. So when I test somebody in a minute here, a patient's going to come up to the front, but they don't know. So it is, but they're coming up to the front. Then we test on the arm, and then we touch on an area. So my hand is the pad. So I touch on the surface of the skin. It creates an electrical block temporarily, which puts stress on that organ. And then we measure the electricity of how strong that organ is. So all we need to know is, one, what's stressing the body. Or you have a virus, a chemical, what it might be. You need to know what organ is out, so you can give it organ food. The third thing you need to know is the remedy. How are you going to fix this? And then also you need follow-up. So it's like, how long will this take to solve this? And when do you change? If you don't know that information, it's just like, it's useless, because you're just going to a health food store and they say, you need a colon cleanse. Boy, really get your royalty, we'll clean you out, it'll be great. And you're like, well, how come I'm sick for 3 weeks and I can't get out of bed? That's not normal. That shouldn't be happening. That means it wasn't the right cleanse. Okay? Good. So let's go ahead and get a demonstration up. Oh, look at that. A brave soul. Boy.
She knew she was in trouble.
Yeah, boy, she's... All right. So, middle finger here. Good. So all of these are signs, when we test the body. So we can measure the strength. So she's on a program, which is great. So her arm is really strong. I'm just pushing. It's not arm wrestling. We're just using the muscle to determine if it locks, right? And then the other part is, I can go ahead and use her belly button here. I'm going to go this way. This is a standard test, which means that when the body picks up on my frequency, because I'm electric, this is a negative side of my hand. This is a positive side. Positive, negative in nature, right? She has no strength and she can't keep her arm up. On the other side of the hand, actually she gets stronger. On the other side, she loses power. So it's just a standard. So with that in mind, we actually measure each part of her body electrically. I do a full body scan when I test a patient, find out where the problems are, and we can actually literally find out genetic weaknesses that people don't even realize they have. Like I say, it looks like you inherited your grandfather's heart, and so let's fix that. So what's so exciting is I help children I help women through birth, through pregnancy, and then birth, and have the child come in about a month later. I test the child, we find out all the genetic weaknesses, digestive weaknesses, liver problems or whatever, and we get them started on supplements right away. And what that does, that just extends their life. It's just amazing. I mean, they just bounce back right away. They don't have infections, ear infections, or colds. It's just amazing what's possible. Okay, good. Thank you. Let's give her a hand. She was very brave. Okay. All right. So in summary, I just want you to know that I know this works. The reason why this is such a powerful thing is because we're getting to the root cause of the problem. You can try a lot of other things, go on the internet, you can try to fix these things yourself, but it's all about results, right? So that's what I do. I study constantly. I go to seminars every other weekend, or not, at least once a month, and I'm continually looking at the best and the best products that are safe, and I do a lot of clinical research. So I want you to know that I myself was saved by this program, in the sense that I found a tapeworm in myself that was killing me. It was literally sucking the life out of me. I had no idea, that tapeworms even existed in the United States. And I knew about it, but it was just amazing to me, a shock that I had this since I was about 16, this tapeworm. That's a whole other topic. We actually have a DVD. Who said that? Okay. Good question. So I have a DVD. If you're interested, you can ask the front. We can, get any. We have over 65 DVDs now, different topics from ADHD to female hormones to whatever it might be you're interested in, just like tonight's topic, so you can learn something new. So in summary, handle your scars, get tested, and get on a program. And like me, I can't tell you how my health continues to climb and climb. We have a way to measure the person's health, which is through this graph called an HRV. Many times people are actually older than they actually are. So this is a woman, actually, it was only 40, let's see, wait a minute. Yeah, 19-year-old male, excuse me. And he was actually 70 years old, to clarify the
His intestines.
No,
What part of head?
his internal body, how
Internal
well it was
body.
functioning, right?
Okay.
And he felt like he was 70. He was so exhausted, it was unbelievable. He couldn't think, he was depressed, had mercury poisoning on his brain and on his thyroid. And the doctors kept giving him cortisone and all these crazy things. And anyway, we got him to actually eventually in his 30s and beyond. So the thing is that it's possible. So we use technology, actually high technology, to actually measure the improvement. So you don't have to just take my word for it. Actually, we use advanced technology. Okay? So I want to thank you for coming tonight. I hope you learned something. I do hope that if you know somebody that's suffering, that wants some help and needs some help, the best way really is to invite them to a lecture or get a DVD, that's free or rental, and we'd love to help them, because that's really our goal and our mission, is to get this word out, because America is in trouble. We're ranked 37 out of 50 countries in health. 1 is being the best ranking, 37 is almost the worst.
Too many McDonald's.
Exactly. Well,
Too many McDonald's.
exactly. So fast food, fast medicine. So we need to change that. So I want to thank you for coming, and make sure you stay for testing. And thank you once again. Thank you very much.
You're ready.